My name is Zuri Carter. I'm 34 years old, a licensed electrician, and I own my house outright. It's not some modern glass mansion or anything you'd see in a design magazine. It's a modest 3-bedroom place with a garage I actually use, a lawn I mow myself, and a mortgage I paid off faster than most people thought possible. My truck is paid for. My bills are covered. My life is steady. Nothing flashy, just solid. I didn't always realize how threatening that kind of stability can be to the wrong people. I'd been dating Ethan Wallace for about 10 months. He was 31, worked in finance downtown, wore tailored jackets even on casual Fridays. He liked craft cocktails and spoke in sentences that ended with soft confidence, like he was used to being agreed with. On paper, we didn't make sense to his world, but I thought we made sense to each other. Ethan always told me he admired how grounded I was, how I didn't chase titles or prestige, how refreshing it was to be with someone real. I took that as a compliment at the time. I didn't hear the quiet separation hidden inside those words. His friends were exactly what you'd expect. Ambitious, polished, always discussing promotions, travel plans, wine regions I couldn't pronounce. I'd met them maybe half a dozen times. They were polite, smiled a lot, asked surface-level questions, and every time there was that subtle feeling, like I was visiting a space that wasn't built for me. There were comments I ignored. At a wine bar 3 months in, someone joked about Ethan slumming it with a blue-collar girl. Everyone laughed like it was harmless. At a dinner party, his friend Melissa asked if I'd ever considered doing something more with my career. When I said I loved my job, she tilted her head like I'd just admitted something unfortunate. Ethan always looked uncomfortable when those moments happened. He'd change the subject, squeeze my hand under the table. Later, he'd apologize for his friends being a little much. I believed him. Last Saturday was Melissa's birthday. She insisted I come, said it wouldn't feel right if I wasn't there. That should have been my first real warning. The restaurant was expensive in the quiet way. Cloth napkins, dim lighting, a wine list thicker than a novel. I wore my nicest blouse and clean jeans. Everyone else looked like they'd stepped out of a networking event. Dinner went fine at first. Small talk, work stories. I listened more than I spoke. Ethan stayed close, looping me into conversations, like he knew I needed the reminder that I belonged there. Then dessert arrived. Melissa stood up, wine glass in hand, smiling wide. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she said. "This year taught me so much about relationships and what I want." She scanned the table, then landed on Ethan. "And watching you has been enlightening." Ethan laughed, confused but flattered. "What do you mean?" he asked. Melissa didn't hesitate. "Well, your whole dating down phase. It really puts life in perspective, doesn't it? Now you know exactly what you don't want." The table went silent. I felt my stomach drop, but my face stayed calm. She kept going. "I mean, dating someone so different from your usual type. Different education, different lifestyle. It's been like a live case study for the rest of us." Someone chuckled. Someone else nodded. I looked at Ethan. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, frozen, embarrassed, silent, while his friends toasted my humiliation like it was a learning moment. I reached into my wallet, placed cash beside my plate, stood up, and said, "Happy birthday. Thanks for the lesson." And I walked out. I didn't run. That's what I'm proud of most, looking back. I didn't shove my chair back hard enough to make a scene. I didn't snap some perfect movie-style comeback. I didn't throw a drink in Melissa's face or scream at Ethan in the middle of a restaurant where men in suits were cutting steak like nothing in the world could ever touch them. I just left. Quietly, cleanly, like I was peeling myself out of a place that never planned to hold me. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. The valet stand glowed under those warm little bulbs, and for a second, it felt unreal, like I'd stepped out of a soundproof room and realized my ears were ringing the whole time. I found my truck, climbed in, and just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel. 10 months. Not 10 days, not a fling, not "we're still seeing where this goes." 10 months of Sunday mornings and shared takeout. 10 months of Ethan's hand on my back when we crossed a street. 10 months of him kissing my forehead and telling me I was different in a way he supposedly admired. And now I was hearing it out loud, what different actually meant to them. My phone started buzzing before I even put the key in the ignition. Ethan calling. I stared at the screen like it was a dare. Decline. A text popped up immediately. "Ethan, Zuri, please don't leave like this." Another call. Decline. Another text. "Ethan, Melissa was drunk. She didn't mean it." I laughed, one sharp breath that didn't feel like humor at all. Because drunk or not, Melissa's words had been too polished, too confident, too specific. You don't accidentally give a toast like that. You don't accidentally call someone a phase in front of 12 people unless you've rehearsed the idea in your mind long before the wine hit your bloodstream. I drove home with my phone face down in the passenger seat, like it was something radioactive. When I walked into my house, the silence hit me harder than the restaurant did. No background music, no clinking glasses, no fake laughter. Just my living room, my keys hitting the counter, and the truth settling into the air like dust. I cracked a beer, not because I wanted it, but because my hands needed something to do. Then I sat on the edge of my couch and replayed the last 10 months like it was surveillance footage. The little moments I'd dismissed. The way Ethan's friends looked me up and down like they were assessing quality. The way he always introduced me with extra explanation. This is Zuri, she's an electrician. Not just this is Zuri. Like my job needed context, like it needed to be softened. And the worst part? The way he'd always smiled after, like he thought he was being supportive. Around 11 p.m., I turned my phone back on. It lit up so fast it looked like it was panicking. 19 missed calls, 26 text messages. I scrolled through them, my chest tight. Ethan. I'm so sorry. Ethan. Melissa is an idiot. Ethan. Please don't take this seriously. Ethan. Everyone thinks she was out of line. Ethan. She's jealous. She's single. Ethan. Don't throw away what we have over something stupid. Ethan. Zuri, answer me. Ethan. I'm coming to your house. That last one made my stomach flip. Not because I was scared of him. Because even now, even after humiliating silence, he still thought he could decide what happened next. He still thought access to me was something he could demand. I started blocking numbers. His personal number first. Then, when a new number called 2 minutes later, I blocked that too. My house felt too still after that, like the walls were listening. Midnight came and went. Then I heard it. A car door shutting outside. I moved to the window, lifted the blinds just enough to see. A sleek black car, Ethan's, parked across the street. His headlights were off. The engine was still running. And there he was, sitting behind the wheel, watching my house. My throat went dry. Then he got out, walked up my driveway like he belonged there. Like he hadn't just let his entire friend group turn me into a punchline. Knocking started, firm, controlled. Zuri, his voice carried through the door. I know you're in there. Please, just talk to me. I didn't move. My hands clenched at my sides. He knocked again. Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes. Like everything he'd let happen could be wiped clean with the right tone of voice. He knocked for 10 minutes straight. Then he stopped. I waited, heart pounding, expecting him to leave. But when I peeked through the blinds again, he was back in the car. Still there. Still watching. That's when something inside me shifted. Because apologies don't look like surveillance. Regret doesn't sit in the dark outside someone's house like it's claiming territory. If he was truly sorry, he would have defended me when it counted. This wasn't remorse. This was panic. At 12:30 a.m., he finally drove off. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I opened my front door and found a bouquet sitting on my porch like a bribe. There was a note tucked into the flowers. I'm sorry. What we have is real. Please don't let Melissa ruin this. I stared at the handwriting for a long time. Then I dropped the whole thing into the trash. Flowers don't rewrite history. I made coffee and stood at my kitchen sink, looking out at my quiet neighborhood. The kind where people wave, where nobody tries to rank you by the glass you drink wine from. And my mind kept circling back to one specific detail. Not Melissa's cruelty, not Ethan's silence, but the phrase itself, dating down experiment. That wasn't a drunk slip. That was vocabulary. That was language that had been repeated enough times to feel natural coming out of her mouth, which meant it existed somewhere before that toast. In their group chats, in their jokes, in the way they talked about me when I wasn't there. And Ethan? His face at the table had been worse than anger. It had been embarrassment. Not how dare you speak to her like that, but oh my God, you said it out loud. That's what kept eating at me. I didn't leave because Melissa was rude. I left because my boyfriend didn't protect my dignity when 12 people were watching it get torn apart. And a man who can't defend you publicly doesn't deserve you privately. By noon, I'd already decided something. I wasn't going to argue with Ethan. I wasn't going to negotiate my worth. I wasn't going to stay in something where I had to wonder if I was love or a lesson. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail notification from an unknown number. I didn't play it. Instead, I opened my settings and blocked every number that had tried to reach me. And for the first time since the restaurant, the silence in my house felt like relief. But peace doesn't last long when someone is used to being able to reach you whenever they want. Because the next day, Ethan brought the chaos to my real life. I thought blocking Ethan would be enough. I thought silence would send the message I didn't feel like repeating. I was wrong. The next day, I was on site downtown, wiring the upper floor of a new office build. Steel beams, exposed concrete, the steady hum of tools, work that required focus, work that didn't leave room for emotional messes. I was halfway through my lunch break when my supervisor, Mark, walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. "Zuri," he said carefully, "there's a guy outside asking for you." My stomach dropped. "A guy?" I asked, already knowing. "Yeah, says it's urgent." I glanced toward the temporary fencing that separated the site from the sidewalk. Ethan stood there, perfectly pressed coat, clean shoes, phone in hand like a prop. He was smart enough to stay outside the construction zone, but close enough that everyone could see him. Waiting. I exhaled slowly. "Tell him I'm busy." Mark hesitated. "I already did. He said he'll wait." Of course he would. I could feel eyes on me now. My crew pretending not to stare, curiosity buzzing louder than the power tools. This wasn't fair, to me or my job. I walked toward the fence, my boots crunching on gravel. Ethan's face lit up the second he saw me, relief washing over his features like he'd won something. "Zuri," he said quickly, "thank you for coming over." "You can't be here," I said, keeping my voice level. "This isn't appropriate." "Please," he said, 5 minutes. I didn't answer. "What Melissa said was completely wrong," he rushed on. "I told her that." "When?" I asked. He faltered, just slightly. "After. I mean later that night. So not when it mattered." "I was in shock," he said. "I couldn't believe she said something so horrible." "Horrible," I repeated, "but not inaccurate enough for you to interrupt." "That's not fair." "My entire crew is watching this conversation," I said quietly, "and you're still trying to debate whether I deserve to be defended." He glanced around then, realizing for the first time that people were paying attention. "Please," he said again, lowering his voice, "let's just get coffee, or dinner. Tonight, tomorrow, whatever you want." "I don't want anything," I said. "That's the point." "Zuri, you're overreacting." There it was. I felt something snap, not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean break. "I was publicly humiliated," I said, and my boyfriend stayed silent. "I didn't agree with her." "You didn't disagree either." "That doesn't mean anything." "It means everything." I stepped back. "I'm not interested in being your learning experience anymore." "That's not what this was," he said quickly. "Melissa doesn't understand our relationship." "She understood it well enough to give a toast about it." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I'm not giving up on us," he said. "We're stronger than one stupid moment." "There is no us," I said calmly. "There's just you realizing too late that you crossed a line." I turned and walked back into the site without waiting for a response. I didn't look back. He stayed for another 10 minutes, according to Mark. Then he left. That night, the pressure came from a different direction. His sister Rachel called me. We'd met twice, holidays, casual dinners. She always seemed level-headed, kind even. "Zuri," she said gently, "I heard what happened." "I'm sure you did." "Ethan told me. What Melissa said was completely out of line." "I agree." "He's been a mess," she continued. "I've never seen him like this. He genuinely cares about you." I leaned against my kitchen counter, eyes closed. "Rachel," I said, "your brother sat there while his friends reduced me to a social experiment." "He froze," she said. "That's what he does under pressure." "That's convenient." He was embarrassed. "Yes," I said, "he was." Silence stretched between us. "You really think he sees you as beneath him?" she asked carefully. I opened my eyes. "Your brother has a master's degree. I work with my hands. His friends talk about vineyards and venture capital. I drink beer after work. That's not a problem, unless someone thinks it is." "That shouldn't matter if you love someone." "It mattered to Melissa," I said. "And judging by the room, it mattered to more than just her." Rachel sighed. "So that's it? You're not even giving him a chance to explain?" "He had his chance," I said. "Saturday night. That was it." After we hung up, I sat alone in my living room, the weight of the last 48 hours pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to believe Ethan had just failed in the moment, that he was shocked, that he didn't mean it. But another part of me, the part that had lived in those rooms with his friends, absorbing quiet judgment, knew better. Because shock doesn't look like silence. Shock looks like instinct. And his instinct had been to protect himself from discomfort, not me from humiliation. The next day, Ethan tried something new, something desperate, something that crossed a line so completely it erased any lingering doubt I had left. My phone rang mid-afternoon. It was my mother. "Zuri," she said slowly, "I just got a very strange call." My chest tightened. "From who?" "Your boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, a man named Ethan." I closed my eyes. What did he want? He wanted me to talk to you, said there was a misunderstanding. What did you tell him? I told him I don't interfere in my daughter's relationships, she said, and that calling me was inappropriate. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Good. But, she continued, I'm concerned. How did he even get my number? He mentioned you once, I said. Brought cookies to my job site. He called around, she said. Tracked down your supervisor's office. They thought it was an emergency. That wasn't romantic. That was control disguised as devotion. My mother paused. So, she said, what happened, Zuri? I told her everything. When I finished, she didn't rush to fill the silence. Then she said, you did the right thing. Even if he didn't mean it? I asked quietly. Especially then, she replied, because you deserve someone who's proud of you out loud. I thanked her and hung up. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed one last time. A text. Unknown number. Zuri, this is Melissa. I owe you an apology. I stared at the screen. Curiosity won, I replied. And what she said next made me question everything all over again. I almost didn't answer. Melissa's name sat on my screen like a splinter, small, sharp, and irritating in a way that wouldn't let me ignore it. Part of me wanted to block the number immediately and preserve the clean lines I'd drawn around my life in the past few days. But another part of me, the part that hates loose ends, wanted to know. So I typed back. Me, go ahead. The reply came almost instantly. Melissa, what I said at my birthday was wrong. Completely wrong. I was drunk, frustrated, and I took it out on you. That doesn't excuse it. I'm sorry. I read it twice. There was no justification yet. No but. No softening language. That alone surprised me. I didn't respond right away. 5 minutes passed. Then another message. Melissa, I spoke to Ethan yesterday. He told me how serious you two actually are. He's been planning to introduce you to his parents over Christmas. I stared at that line longer than I should have. Introduce me to his parents. That was new information. If it was true, it complicated things in a way I hadn't prepared for. Me. Funny way of showing it. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Melissa, you're right. I don't have a defense for how it came out. I was projecting my own situation onto yours. Me. What situation? There was a pause this time. Long enough that I set my phone down, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the kitchen window while my thoughts spiraled. When the phone buzzed again, I picked it up slowly. Melissa, my ex used to talk about his previous relationship as dating down. He said it all the time. I guess I had it stuck in my head, and when I saw you and Ethan together, I filled in blanks that weren't mine to fill. I leaned against the counter. So the phrase did come from somewhere, just not from Ethan. Me, you called me an experiment in front of 12 people. Melissa, I know, and I hate myself for it. I've been replaying it since that night. Me, then why did you say it? Her response took longer this time. Melissa, because I'm a snob, and because I was bitter, and because I thought I was being clever instead of cruel. I closed my eyes. There was something unsettling about how honest that sounded. Melissa, Ethan has never said anything negative about you. Ever. He talks about you constantly, about how grounded you are, how different being with you feels. Different. That word again. Me. Then why do I feel like an exhibit when I'm around you and your friends? Her reply came slower now, more deliberate. Melissa, because we're not used to people who don't perform. That's our problem, not yours. I set the phone down and rubbed my temples. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because if Melissa was just drunk, just bitter, just projecting, then maybe the entire thing was one awful misunderstanding. Maybe I'd blown up a real relationship over someone else's cruelty. But then another memory surfaced. 2 weeks before the birthday dinner, Ethan had suggested a weekend trip to Napa. I'd looked up wine tour prices and laughed. That's way out of my budget. He'd smiled and said, I could cover it if you can't. At the time, I'd thought it was generous. Now I remembered the look that followed. Not concern. Calculation. Then there was his office holiday party last month. His boss made a joke about blue-collar workers complaining about inflation. Everyone laughed. Ethan had changed the subject. Not defended me. Not corrected him. Just redirected. 3 weeks ago, Ethan had suggested I take some continuing education courses. Just to keep your options open, he'd said. Don't you want to grow? When I told him I loved my job, he'd nodded, like someone humoring a phase. None of those moments were dramatic on their own. But together, they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore anymore. My phone buzzed again. Melissa, I know you don't owe me anything. I just wanted you to know I was wrong about everything. I typed slowly. Me, I appreciate the apology. She replied immediately. Melissa, whatever happens between you and Ethan, I hope you know this. What I said wasn't the truth. It was my ugliness, not your reality. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I set my phone face down and walked into my bedroom. That night I barely slept. Because for the first time since the restaurant, doubt had crept in. What if Ethan really hadn't meant it? What if he truly saw me as an equal, but failed in the worst possible moment? What if I was throwing away something real because I couldn't get past one silence? By morning, my resolve felt thinner than it had the day before. And that scared me, because self-respect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it wavers. Sometimes it asks you to choose between loneliness and familiarity. By Wednesday, I knew I couldn't sit with uncertainty anymore. I needed an answer. Not from Melissa, not from his sister, not from my mother, from Ethan. So I called him, and I decided to ask him one question. Just one. A question that didn't allow speeches or promises or grand gestures. A question that would tell me everything I needed to know. Ethan answered on the first ring. "Zuri," he said, breathless, like he'd been holding it since Saturday night. "I'm so glad you called." "I'm not calling to reconcile," I said. "I'm calling to be clear." "I understand," he said quickly. "Whatever you need. I'll answer anything." I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the small crack in the wall above the sink. A crack I'd been meaning to fix for months. Something minor, something honest, something that didn't pretend to be perfect. Before Melissa's speech, I said, "Had you ever thought of our relationship as dating down?" The silence on the other end wasn't long, but it was long enough. No, he said, then corrected himself too fast. "I mean, not like that." "That wasn't a yes or no," I replied. He exhaled. "Zuri, I think you're taking the phrasing too literally." "Did you ever think you were beneath your level?" I asked again, slower this time. "Even for a second, early on." Another pause. Smaller, more careful. "Maybe," he said. "At first, I wondered if we were compatible long-term because we come from such different worlds." I closed my eyes. "That's the same thing," I said. "No, it's not," he insisted. "Different doesn't mean lesser." "But it does when one world is treated like the default and the other is treated like an exception," I said. "You didn't wonder if you were enough for me. You wondered if I was enough for you." "That's not fair." "It's accurate." "Zuri, that changed," he said quickly. "Months ago, I fell in love with you." "I believe that," I said, and I meant it. "But love that needs time to stop ranking people isn't the kind I want." He rushed on. "I'll cut Melissa out. I'll distance myself from anyone who disrespects you. I'll introduce you to my parents this weekend. We can move in together. I'll do whatever you want." I let him finish. Then I said, "That's panic talking." "It's commitment." "It's fear," I corrected. "Fear of losing something that made you feel different, not fear of losing me." "That's not true." "It is," I said softly. "Because when I needed you to choose me in front of a room full of people, you chose silence." I froze, and I paid for it. There was nothing left to say. "Ethan," I continued, "I don't want to be with someone who had to learn that I was worthy. I want someone who starts there." He didn't argue after that. His voice cracked. "So this is it?" "Yes." "Then, I hope you find someone who fits you from day one," he said. I almost laughed. "I already have," I replied. "It's me." I ended the call. Part 6. Walking away is the revenge. It's been a week. No more calls, no surprise visits, no flowers. Either Ethan finally accepted it, or he found someone who fit more neatly into his world. Someone whose presence didn't challenge his friends or force him to confront uncomfortable hierarchies. I don't wonder which one it is. Yesterday, I had lunch with my friend Naomi, another tradeswoman I've known for years. We sat in the back of a diner, grease-stained menus and strong coffee between us. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "I could have told you that months ago." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "That man never looked at you like an equal," she said. "He looked at you like you were fascinating, like you were refreshing, but not like you belonged in his life long term." "You noticed that?" She snorted. "We all did." That settled something deep in my chest. Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from the person who hurt you. It comes from the people who saw it coming. I don't hate Ethan. I don't even hate Melissa. I'm grateful to her. Because her toast saved me years. It showed me what 10 more months, or 10 more years, would have looked like. Me constantly wondering if I was enough. Me shrinking in rooms I had every right to stand tall in. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was leaving. It was refusing to be someone's lesson. Ethan got his education about what he doesn't want. Turns out he doesn't want a woman with enough self-respect to walk away when disrespected. That's fine, because next time I'll choose someone who sees dating me as moving up, not settling.